They refused to let me in to attend church here. I was flabbergasted when the usher came and told me I couldn't come in. And then another usher brought me around the back to the Reverend's office.
Hi, my name is Lily Nix. I'm 16 years old. I go to Decatur High School. I'm a junior, and I'm a member at St. Mark Methodist Church.
Oh, very good. Well, I guess you want some background from me, you know. Oh, I'm Reverend Paul Easley, born 9/7/30, and 92 years old. I may not look it, but I am. I feel it at times. I'm originally from Charleston, West Virginia. Was a member of the West Virginia Conference of the Methodist Church. That's where I was ordained. But I came to seminary here in Gammon and graduated in Gammon in '59.
How did you meet Reverend Dow Kirkpatrick?
Well, I met him. He came out to our school to speak when I was a student. I was in my 30s, I think. I was pastoring a church in Fairmont, West Virginia. And he mesmerized me. He was really tremendous. I just was moved by him, by his personality, because he was the first one of a white minister to come to our school, even though Dr. Richardson, who was the president at the time, invited a few people of other racial backgrounds to speak at our seminary. And he just impressed me, really tremendous. He was pastor here at the time. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Chloe Tillman. I'm 11 years old. I'm in 5th grade, and I go to Impact Church.
Great. My name is Beth LaRocca Pitts. I am the senior pastor at Oak Grove United Methodist Church here in Decatur. Yes, in the 60s, when integration was going on in the public schools here in Atlanta, Atlanta City Schools were considering closing down rather than integrating. And so there were ministers in Atlanta who opposed that, who wanted to keep the schools open and who wanted to support integration of the schools. And the pastor here at that time was a pastor named Dow Kirkpatrick. He was here at St. Mark, and he signed something with a lot of other pastors here in the downtown, midtown area called the Minister's Manifesto. And it was a document in support of integration of the schools. Dow was a very forward-thinking pastor. He was interested in missions. He was very social justice oriented. And so he was a leader in a lot of the white churches and their support for civil rights. And for many years, that story about his activism during integration was told here at St. Mark as one of the high points of the church's history. And another story was also told quite often, and that was the story about how a young man, an African-American man, came to the church and wanted to worship here and wanted to hear Reverend Kirkpatrick preach. And the ushers showed him out and would not let him in the church, escorted him out of the church. That story was told over and over again here at St. Mark, but we never knew who the young man was.
I wanted to visit Dr. Kirkpatrick because at that time the church had integrated some, and I wanted to come to visit him at the church, and they refused to let me in. The usher told me I couldn't come in. I was flabbergasted when the usher came and told me I couldn't come. You know, I didn't have any anger feelings, but I was just confused because since the church had come together, I assumed we could still attend any church. And then another usher brought me around the back to the Reverend's office, and I talked with him, and Dr. Kirkpatrick apologized to me and gave me his card, which I still carry. Yeah, that's his card he gave me.
That's so cool. Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah. And I carry that because he just impressed me so.
Yeah.
And I kept his card. And he told me to call him anytime, you know. He stayed on my mind ever since.
We never knew who the young African-American man was who tried to come to church and was shown out by the ushers and was brought in by Mr. Brooks. We knew Mr. Brooks's name, but we didn't know the young man's name. It was many years later. It wasn't until I was the pastor here and we had an assistant pastor named Sheila Stevens. She still works here at the church. She's the children's minister here at St. Mark. She overheard me repeating that story and she goes, I know who that person was. I know who that young man was, and I couldn't believe it. I said, you know who it was? And she said, yes, that was Paul Easley. I've heard him tell the story of how he came to St. Mark. So I thought, well, we just have to have him come. We have to have him come and preach. We have to let him know how important he was to the development of this church. I thought, well, we're having homecoming. He should come and he should preach here. And I learned, too, when he came, that our version of the story was not precisely like his version of the story. I had always thought that he came in to worship and sat with Mr. Brooks and heard Dr. Kirkpatrick preach. But when I met Reverend Easley, he let me know that no, he didn't come into the sanctuary and hear Reverend Kirkpatrick preach, that the reaction to his just coming in the building to see Dow changed so many things here, even though he didn't come and attend worship. So many people in the congregation were distressed and upset by the fact that he came here. Some of the members left the church, and one of the members who had donated a stained glass window to the church came with a work crew and tried to take the window back. And so it was a catalyst for change here. It led to a new idea of integration here at the church. Mr. Brooks took him around the side of the church and into Dow's office, and he spoke with Dow, and Dow gave him his business card, which he still carries. But the fact that we remembered the story as the time that St. Mark was integrated, I wanted him to come and attend worship here, and I wanted the congregation to know who that story was about, and for them to meet Paul and to know him as the wonderful person that he is.
How did it feel to be invited back to St. Mark after so much time?
Oh, it was tremendous, yeah. The pastor was tremendous, and one of my former members was over education here, and she was black. She was from Ben Hill, and I had told her my story, and some other pastor who was tremendous invited me over to talk with me and asked me about coming back to the church and coming back through the main door. Since I was refused because I hadn't attended a worship service that way. I wondered what I could say or do, what type sermon I could give, but the pastor opened my heart tremendous, if that makes sense. As I recall, it wasn't like I'm coming back to something to clear it up. I just worked on my sermon and told her I would preach that day and didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how many people would be here, and knowing that I was coming back, I was just coming to preach, you know.
Well, I had never really spoken at length with Reverend Easley, and of course I remember how wonderfully kind and tall he is. And I also remember how gracious he was to all the people here and how he preached a wonderful sermon and was very kind. One of the things I'll always remember about that day was we were having a baptism that day. One of our families had adopted a young man whom they had fostered since he was a baby, and it was his baptism day. And so Reverend Easley helped us with the baptism. And when Solomon was having the water put on his head, it must have been an instinct of some kind. Reverend Easley reached around his neck and pulled the cross that he was wearing off from around his neck and put the cross on Solomon's neck and let him have it and let him take it. And just to see that blessing that Reverend Easley gave to him, and how proud we all were to have those stories connected. Solomon's history with his new family and the history of the church. So I love that part of the day. One of the things that was interesting to me about having heard the story of Paul's coming here without knowing who he was, it was interesting to me that there were so many African American Methodists who knew the story and knew who he was. And only the congregation here, we didn't know who he was, but a lot of African American pastors and church members knew that that episode had involved Reverend Easley. And it fascinates me how we didn't cross paths enough. The congregations and the pastors didn't talk to each other enough about that time period, so that we here in the white congregation had no idea of who that history was about. We knew it was part of our history and his history, but we couldn't make the connection because we weren't in the kinds of settings with one another where we might have discovered who he was earlier. The African American people knew it was Paul. We didn't, and didn't really have any connecting point until Reverend Stevens was here and taught us that it was Paul who had come here.
Who will you give your card to?